book study. We have a great group of panelists here tonight, and we want to welcome you from Awesomook. Mark Carbone and Donna Fry, as co-leads on Awesomook, are supporting 6 leaders from across Ontario as they challenge everyone to read the Innovator's Mindset book and lead several activities throughout the province. We have a Voxer group going, we have a blog hop going, we have Twitter chats going, and of course we have these every second Tuesday night we will hang out on air. So this evening I want to introduce, to begin, our moderator, Jennifer Casa-Todd from York Catholic District School Board. Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you so much, Donna, and thank you to everyone for joining us as we talk about part 3 in George Couros' Innovator's Mindset. And this part is about unleashing talent, which is an exciting part of the book, an interesting part of the book, but certainly I think someone said it on Twitter well this morning that it is probably the most challenging as well. So to begin, I would just love for all of us to introduce ourselves. You have an opportunity tonight to participate either by going on Google Plus and just adding a comment there, or if you're joining us on Twitter, if you're watching and joining us on Twitter, you're welcome to participate by using the hashtag Awesomook or Innovator's Mindset, and if you can squeeze both in, that's great. And we do have Lee and Stacy today who will be bringing in ideas and questions from Twitter and the Google Plus community into the group, so that's great. So we're going to begin by introducing ourselves, and if you're on Twitter and Google Plus, you're welcome to introduce yourself on those platforms as well. So my name is Jennifer Casa-Todd, as Donna mentioned. I'm the literacy consultant for the York Catholic District School Board, and I'm part of an awesome team that helps teachers with technology-enabled learning and bringing the 60s into the classroom. It's an amazing time to be an educator, and I'm excited to be here tonight. So why don't we move to Brian? Why don't you introduce yourself, Brian?
Okay, I'm Brian Jackson, and I'm a principal at Tay Shores Public School, which is just on Georgian Bay, beautiful Georgian Bay. And we're just starting as a staff together this year for the first time because we're an amalgamated school. There's 3 schools that closed, and we've all come together in one school now. And we're having a lot of adventures and a lot of learning curves for everybody. But I'm excited to join the panel tonight. Thanks.
And we're excited to have you with us, so thank you, Brian. And Jen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Jen Hagna. I'm the Technology Director for Byron Public Schools in Byron, Minnesota, and I'm also an adjunct professor for Winona State University, and been in the ed tech realm for 20 years.
Lots of expertise to share with us tonight, for sure. Thanks, Jen. And Lee?
Sorry, I was busy tweeting. My name is Lee Castle, and I am a full-time technology coach with the Avon-Maitland District School Board. In my role, I support the integration of technology into classrooms. My focus is blogging as pedagogy and globally connected learning. I'm also founder of the Digital Human Library, facilitating connections between teachers and students and experts around the world.
Thanks, Lee. Welcome to our panel discussion. And Lisa, how about you just go in order and introduce yourselves? So Lisa?
Okay, I'm glad that you said I was next, because in my visual, Mark's next. So I'm Lisa Noble, and I teach core French and instrumental music to grade 5 to 8 in Peterborough, Ontario. And integrating technology into the classroom in a meaningful way is a passion of mine, and I need to do a shout out to Brian on the other end, because I spent 3 summers as a historic interpreter at Ste. Marie among the Hurons, so Tay Shores is my stomping grounds, and was one of the places where I really developed my passion for teaching and interesting connections.
Welcome, Lisa. That's great. Nice that you have that connection as well. Mark?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Carbone. I'm with the Waterloo Region District School Board. My role at the board is as Chief Information Officer, and it's also my pleasure to serve on the OSAPAC committee and co-lead the Awesome MOOC project with Donna Fry.
Thanks, Mark. Great to have you with us and your wealth of expertise as well. Donna, do you want to jump in with your official role and introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks very much, Jen. I have a little better Wi-Fi tonight, I think, because I'm coming to you from Toronto, from York University, where we're here with the ABLE Leadership Conference. And I work as co-lead of Awesome MOOC as part of the OSPAC committee with Mark Carbone, and also I'm the provincial lead for leading technology-enabled learning and teaching, and it has been such a joy to work to support the 6 leaders who have been working on this project over the last 2 months. So thanks for taking part in this, folks. You're doing a fabulous job. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Donna. Patrick? We can't hear you, Patrick. I'm going to jump over to Stacy while you figure out your mic. Stacy.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Walwyn. I work as a TELT, that's the Technology Enabled Learning and Teaching Contact, in my board, which is Superior Greenstone District School Board up in Northwestern Ontario. And I have lost my voice today, so I won't say too much, but I'm really excited to be here and I look forward to the Twitter chat tonight. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Stacy. And conserve your voice, but we'd love to hear your opinions, so jump in when you need to. Tina, welcome.
So my name's Tina Zita. I work with the Peel District School Board, supporting teachers at integrating tech in their program.
Thank you. And Tina is the creator of all the wonderful posters that you'll see as the evening moves forward. Patrick, do we have you on speaker now? We don't. Okay, so while Patrick figures out his mic situation, I also want to welcome George Couros, who's actually in Kingston, Ontario, and is joining us on Twitter, I believe. So you may notice that he'll be on the hashtags this evening responding, so we're excited to have you here. And you'll notice this panel discussion, or the panelists are so diverse. And so we're talking about leadership, but we really are talking about all kinds of leaders. So whether we work at the district level or we work to innovate within our schools, I think you'll find that this conversation will be fruitful, especially because we all come from such diverse backgrounds. So we will start with the first question, and that is from Chapter 8 of the Innovator's Mindset. And the question is, how do you find the balance between mentoring and micromanaging to ensure people feel supported and comfortable taking risks? So that's a big question, and why don't we start with, who would like to start this one? Lisa, why don't we start with you?
I'm gonna jump in because of the deafening silence. I was the person who actually posted that tweet this morning about this being the most challenging part of the book. This is such a fine balance, and for me, I'm going to admit right off the bat that it's hugely hard for me. And again, I'm going to go back to what Lee said at the end of our last session, which was relationships, 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 and if we don't have those, if we don't have those in place, if we don't have a trust relationship, then people are going to feel micromanaged. People are going to feel like they're being told what to do without that why. And go back to Simon Sinek and go back to start with why, because that's how you can create that mentoring relationship. If you know enough about the people you're working with to know what it is that maybe there's a topic that their class is diving into with inquiry, that's your way in. That's your mentoring spot, instead of people feeling like this is one more thing that I have to do. And I loved, there's a quote in the book that I want to have on a t-shirt that talks about remembering that not everybody's plate is the same size. and that as you're putting things on people's plates, some people have a really small plate and room for not a lot, and other people have a bigger plate. And knowing which is which, I think helps you be able to have that kind of mentoring stance rather than it being, this is what you have to do, and not necessarily coming up with the why.
I really like that, Lisa. I'm just, as I think about when I work with staff, I think if we define the path for people all the time and they don't have an opportunity to help create their own path, I just wonder, if we all have a goal, but if we tell them how to get to that goal, is that kind of what you're thinking too? I know I've had great success in just that dialogue, and I totally agree with you about the relationship and the trust. And sometimes we just have to trust our staff and our students that they're making good decisions and mentor them along the way versus telling them exactly what they have to do throughout the entire journey.
Yeah, that says what I was trying to say better than I said it. Yes, very much so. That it's kind of, it's waypointing more than actually walking along the whole way. You kind of go, here's the door, here are some options, go explore.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to jump in on this question?
I'd like to bring something in from Twitter. Sarah Brillinger, so at @sbrillinger1, tweeted, "Careful listening. How can we help each other to get there for our students? Focus on the why." And listening is such an important quality, and I'm just replying to her now. And it really aligns with that idea of being empathetic and hearing the voices and the needs of those, of all learners.
I found this year, for a change, we started, after reading George's book, we started with a strength-based approach rather than deficit-based, and I think that's a huge difference. So in the past, we've always created PLCs or PD sessions based on what the school's deficits are and what people are needing to learn rather than from what they do well. And after reading George's book, that's made a huge difference. People choose to do their PD because it's where they feel comfortable, and allowing them to follow those aspirations has made a huge difference for us.
Hey Jen, it's Stacy. Erica Armstrong tweeted out that from the perspective of someone who's received both, it's about supporting my needs versus forcing your needs. I thought that was a really good perspective in terms of everyone has we know we have multiple entry points when we're leading PD, and to be respectful of that. So that was good that was from Erica on Twitter.
Thank you. And it works so well with that notion of strength-based learning that Brian alluded to in the book as well. I know since we had a Voxer conversation, one of the things I've started with is, what would you like to learn? And so knowing that people aren't coming in with sort of a blank slate, that they do have knowledge and that they do have some sort of ownership or autonomy in terms of where they're going to go, is an important thing. I've seen a difference in even just the way an in-service goes when you start with that strengths-based model. So thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to jump in on this question before we move to the next one?
I wonder if we change the conversation, if we change the word to managing versus micromanaging. I think it's naive to believe that we don't play some role in managing learning experiences. I don't know, at least personally, I can say that I'd love to believe every time I give people choice, but somebody would call me out on Twitter, I'm sure. But is there a role for that managing? And I don't think managing people, but managing an experience. So I think of our Peel Spark night. There were a lot of parts of that night that were managed and weren't necessarily a mentorship experience, but they were managed with a purpose to foster that conversation and that relationship.
What a great point. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Sure. Is my mic on now?
We can hear you. Yay!
Yeah. You have to hear what I say. You might not say yay after that.
Well, why don't you start by introducing yourself, just because we missed that, and then you
Sure.
can do Tina's.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm still Pat Miller, Principal of Innovation with the Simcoe County District School Board, and I get to work with that guy down there, Brian, on the end with the green screen. I've been looking to see what Brian's going to do tonight with that green screen. I'm hoping that there's something happening behind him soon. So I just wanted to mention about this idea of supporting teachers. Instead of monitoring being a surveillance thing, we're trying to support teachers with kind of a self-reflection to help them kind of monitor their own learning. And we've been trying to help teachers with, rather than just give direction and where they should go, but do it with questions. And so instead of giving that direction, just ask questions to push their thinking a little bit.
Yeah, great point, Pat. I'd just jump in there too. I'd prefer the term monitoring rather than managing. So my staff know that I'm monitoring their work, but I'm not really managing it. I think the piece for our staff is that they mentor each other, and our superintendent calls it flatlining. I'm not sure why she chooses that term, but she chooses it to mean that everybody's sort of at the same level. No learner in the room is more important than any other learner in the room. And when you do it that way, it takes that managing piece off, and it turns into more monitoring. Our staff, when they present their PLC work and they're learning with each other, they have a Google form that they co-create, and they give feedback, ongoing feedback to each other, and it's nice to see that it's done in a collaborative, kind way, but it also pushes people's thinking forward, and it allows everybody's thinking and learning to be visible. So I think I like that term monitoring, and I'm sorry, Tina, that I keep getting into a battle about jargon, but I'm not sure that managing is really the right term.
I have a question. You know, when I think about the question itself, it says mentoring and managing to ensure people feel supported to take risks. I mean, do you manage and monitor risk taking, or I mean, what are your thoughts about that? I guess I'm trying to understand how you monitor that aspect, or if you're just maybe following through or following up with them, or if you could explain that a little bit more.
I'm guessing what George wrote, so he probably will pipe up on Twitter. I think you do assess that risk-taking. So when I look at the experiences that we hope to facilitate, I am looking back and monitoring or managing what that growth looks like over time. I don't think that I can necessarily manage it in the sense. So Wendy Goodman, Brian was, to your point, coming up with other words too, so it's all good. So we were talking about maybe if we switched it out for designing, that you're designing experiences, and in that design process, the assessment piece just becomes a natural flow to make sure that we're constantly pushing forward and not just, if I truly, sorry, I haven't had my full can of Coke yet. It's all stuttered conversations here. But if I truly believe that it's a student's right to have these kind of experiences, then in my leadership role, I need to be constantly evaluating my own practice, but then also looking at what I could do differently to support the system and moving forward.
I really like that design. Sorry. No, I was just going to say I really like that frame of designing these opportunities for people to take risks, whether it's students or staff. I really, really like that a lot.
I also liked, Brian, what you said about, so if no learner truly feels that they're more important, then you really are on a journey together. And I think inherently in that is safety, right? Feeling that you can take risks because you are in a learning stance together.
I was going to hop in on what Brian said as well, because there was some really powerful stuff there for me. I think that idea of developing relationships where you can be critical friends where you've got that feedback happening in the PLC and it doesn't feel evaluative because you're all reflecting together and you're self-assessing as well as looking at what's happening with your peers. And it's certainly what we want our students to do. So it's a great modeling opportunity for staff. And yeah, flatlining bothers me too. So I would say that equalization idea, where the fact that everybody is bringing something to the table, and it's not that any learner is bringing, like, everybody's bringing expertise in something.
True, and yet I'm going to pick up on Tina's point about the designer, because I think that, and the point is made, I think it's in chapter 9, with that idea that sometimes we default, right, to what we know, and so it really does sometimes take that person to almost who's designing, for lack of a better term, but the ability to sort of pull us back when we are defaulting back to what we normally do. And I think that can be a very powerful role for someone who is facilitating as well. So that, and I think it's something like we don't often create new experiences unless we experience them for ourselves. So I think for me, especially a challenge at the district level is how do I help to create some of those experiences in professional learning so that learning will move forward, but still doing that reflecting piece and honoring everyone's voice. I think it's a fine balance for sure.
I just wanted to jump in and add one point here. I don't think we can underestimate the power of listening. I think there's such an important role to use listening as a way of understanding people and assessing where they're at, and whether it's, you're right in the classroom setting or perhaps leading some other kind of professional learning session. Just asking the right questions, I think, contributes to people moving along their learning journey, and I would put that out there as something important from my perspective. When Jen started to, well, the one comment you made that really resonated with me is the idea of supporting people is not telling. It's inviting the conversation, and I think that's important in all of our different roles too.
Thank you, Mark. And unless there are any other comments for this question, I'm going to move on to the next question.
I have one more, Jen, just quickly.
Go ahead. Yep.
So we've been doing some thinking about this idea of moving from cooperation, which to me kind of has a feeling of we tolerate people that we cooperate with. You're in a room, you have to cooperate to get a job done. We've moved past that and into collaboration, which kind of needs a feeling of I'm willing to learn something new. I have an open mind. And we're trying to get past that even into co-responsibility. So as Brian mentioned earlier and a few other people have touched on, when the staff have that co-responsibility for whatever it is they're doing, the whole monitoring and moderating and surveillance, all that stuff kind of falls away.
Really good point. Thank you so much, Patrick. And on that note, we'll move to the next question, which is from Chapter 9. And the question is, sorry,
I just wanted to wrap that up with one quick last comment, if you don't mind.
Sure, no, of course.
It's an idea that's really informed some of my thinking around how we enable those on the front lines, and it's the idea of commander's intent, and it comes from the Army, but the idea is that there's an intent to win the war, and you enable people on the front lines to make great decisions, all moving in the same direction, but giving the authority, the ability, the environment that allows them to take risks to the professionals who are educators who have to make those great decisions in the classroom every day. When we can do that, when we have an intent to go in a direction, yet we're enabling our professionals to make the decisions that need to be made, then we're allowing innovation and agility and change to occur very quickly. So that kind of sums up what Patrick was saying, what a few others were saying around the fact that if you're controlling everything that's happening, you're sometimes even losing sight of the goal, and it doesn't allow you in this really rapidly changing environment to be able to make the changes that are necessary, because by the time you've put together the plan, things have shifted so much. So it's having that intent and then understanding that we have really well-educated, well-meaning professionals in front of our children every day, and giving them the power to make the decisions that need to be made for the best student learning.
Thank you so much, Donna. And certainly intentionality is a huge theme in Chapter 8 as well. So thank you for those closing remarks. So the next question is from Chapter 9. How do you move from standardized to personalized learning opportunities for your students and staff? And one of the things that's clear in the book is that this doesn't always talk about technology, but certainly technology has a huge role to play as well. So Jen, could we start with you?
Yeah, so, some of the things that we've tried this year that has been a little bit success. I mean, I would say it's been successful. We're giving teachers choice. We have sessions like once a month in every building. Teachers can choose whether or not they come to those sessions. And then we also have the opportunity for other teachers to lead sessions. And just in the last couple of weeks, we've pinpointed some people that are doing some really great things in their classroom and just asked them, hey, would you mind leading a staff meeting? And that has really inspired some great dialogue, and it's something that we want to continue to implement. I think learning from our peers is just a great experience. We've also done ed camps and that kind of thing, and I think those are really, that's some of the best, most fun PD that we've had. And just to know that you're not going to leave a conference or leave a workshop, you're going to know the person because more than likely they're right next door in their classroom. So finding those people with their talents and finding ways to learn from them, I think, is some great ideas. So.
Thanks so much, Jen. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to how they move from standardized to personalized?
I'll jump in with some things being shared on Twitter here. At Peel ASP shared standard, one size fits none, personalized, increased empathy, and show that you care. So again, back to that idea of empathy and listening and understanding the needs of your learners. And I liked what at Miss EA shared, Erica Armstrong. When I take risks, I like cues, but respond best to open-ended positive cues. Yes, and tell me more about. So again, back to that idea of having that environment be very reciprocal, in the sense that the questions that are being asked are not directed towards an audience, but directed in such a way that they engage an audience, and that we are working in a collaborative space where all ideas are heard and all voices get equal airtime.
Sorry, Jen, I did an OTF Connect webinar last night with Aviva Dunsiger, and Aviva's a person who pushes my learning on a regular basis, and she really amazed me with what she's doing in this way. She's teaching kindergarten this year, having taught juniors as well as primary, and she's an Ontario classroom teacher who has decided, just through her practice and through reflection, to move almost completely away from full class instruction. She does almost none at this point, even with kindergartens. So the bulk of what she's doing is small group geared. She starts the day with provocations. The kids get engaged in provocations. There are activities for them to choose to engage in. Now, she's teaching in full day kindergarten, so she has an ECE with her who's working as a pair, but they are consistently working between small groups and individuals, and every time she blogs about it, it makes me really want to think about how could I take that into my own practice, and really work on individualizing the experience for my students. And I know that people like Erica Armstrong, who's on Twitter tonight, and some other French teachers have started moving into using some technology tools to help with that and really provide self-directed learning in the second language classroom. And I think there's a really big shift starting to happen that way. And I'm hoping that that it's going to lead us in some really interesting directions in terms of programming for really, really differentiating instruction, even more than we're already doing.
We've tried to do the same with some of our technology PD. So we've been doing some digital playgrounds, especially it started with the early years conference. Instead of sitting there just going through apps or tools, we just set up exploration areas with provocation posters and the resources and materials. I think for me, I really love the experience, and I found usually people are engaged in the experience, but I still am struggling with how to make sure how I can personalize it when folks don't feel as comfortable just jumping in and exploring, especially when it comes to technology.
That's a good point. I just want to pick up on, it's interesting that both your examples are early years, and I know in our board we're doing lots of work with ePortfolio. We have an amazing Pathways team and our TELT, and they're working very hard. And we see students who are making their thinking visible and truly choosing what they want to include, and they're all about me portfolio. And I think, wow, you know, how incredible is it that this is personalized learning. This is students who are making choices. They're completely autonomous. And then I think about, what does that look like as kids get older, and are we ready for that? Are teachers embracing this idea? Are we helping to support teachers to also embrace this idea that students in high school can do this as well? That's one of the things I was thinking of as you were speaking, both of you, about the early years experience.
Wow. Go, Donna.
I was just going to say, we've had some really great examples tonight, and I really appreciate the really specific examples that you're giving. I just wanted to give it from a little bit more of a leadership perspective, and I think that the shift from standardized to personalized is really a shift to participatory culture, where everyone has to participate in the learning. And I think the section of this chapter that really hit me the hardest is when George was talking about, if you want to learn carpentry, you sit down beside a carpenter and you learn how they do that work. Where if you want to learn how to learn, you need to sit down with a master learner. So all of our teachers, all of our educators, all of our leaders need to be learners first and be great learners first. And I know Tina touched on this. How do we help encourage our educators to show our children how to learn? How do we make that learning visible? And I think that's really key.
Thank you, Donna.
I just have a comment. So the last couple of weeks I've been interviewing teachers, and it's been interesting because I've also been interviewing students, so teachers that are doing some great things in their classrooms. And nearly 100% of the time when I'm interviewing students and I say, well, we have a choice. Either I'll record this video and I'll upload it later to YouTube, or we'll Periscope it. And 9 times out of 10, actually 99% of the time, the kids want to Periscope it. They want to go live. They want to share what they're doing. And it's really inspiring, you know, when teachers are involved too, that it's kind of actively sharing what they're doing so that others can learn from them. So I just wanted to add, the power of video, you know, can also be a great mechanism to get people to share and learn and that kind of thing too.
Well, and I think the idea of personalizing learning really brings us back to the curriculum as well, when we ask learners to think about what is the purpose and who is your audience. Because there's always a purpose and there's always an audience. And if we keep those two things in mind, whatever task they're engaged in should become more authentic if there is a clearly defined purpose and an audience that they're in, I guess, looking to work with or collaborate with or even just share. That idea of audience is very, very powerful.
I jumped in a little. I offered something to my intermediate students this week, and I was talking to Stacy about this before we started tonight. And our school, we have a new model for buying tech in our board. They're giving us a certain amount per student and asking schools to decide what they want. And it's really self-governing and it's really self-directed. And I asked my tech team, I said, I think we really need to ask the students. And so created a Google Doc, asked my grade 7s and 8s, gave them the same information the teachers had, asked them to put in their information. And they were so, it was amazing to watch. Calculators were flying out, great conversations, and it was because of that. It was because there was an authentic audience. They knew that on Monday I was going to take this to staff. They wanted to be valued, and it was thrilling. It was so exciting to watch them engage in this activity. And the really interesting part, tying into what people have talked about before, one of the most interesting things for me was that students in the older grades, in grades 7 and 8, were more likely to want to buy a full class set of whatever it was because they really had this model of everybody working on the same thing at the same time. Whereas when we started to talk about what would you think about each class having 5 in their classroom or pockets, and it really made them kind of stretch their thinking because it wasn't a model they were used to, whereas our younger classes are much more used to going, yeah, give us 2, rock and roll, we'll record, we'll do whatever. And I think Jen, when you talked about taking this into high school, that's part of it, is moving away from everybody working on the same task all the time. So it was neat to watch my kids stretch their brains a little bit that way.
Thanks, Lisa, for that story. I think that actually, unless someone has something else to add to this conversation, it's a nice segue into our next question for Chapter 10. So before we do that, is there anyone?
Bring in some of the pieces from Twitter?
That would be great.
Just looking in on, Wendy made a great link back to that management piece, that to get from standardized to personalized, that really is that management that gets in the way. And Erica pointed out really the power of digital tools to bring in that personalization piece. And Peter bringing us back to that point that we have that curiosity in the early years, and like you were saying, Jen, how do we really bring that to those older grades and not lose that curiosity over the years? Sorry, somebody may have more.
Yeah, I've got just one thing to add to that. When we talk about professional learning for our teachers, we want it to go the route of being personalized, and so the kind of, I guess, the overarching goals of any inquiry that we offer centrally that we try to support is just that. It's just a starting point, and the teachers in that learning group come together, and they're the ones who decide based on the needs of the students they have in their classroom right now and their own needs as a learner. They decide the direction of that inquiry. So we could have 4 or 5 groups all working on an assessment inquiry in different parts of the county, but based on the needs of their students, they go in a different direction, and that's okay. But I think we have to be careful that the one kind of catch of personalized learning is that those learners need to be coming from a place of student need, and so you need to know your learners before you can take off in a direction of professional learning for yourself.
Can I just add to that, Patrick? That is so awesome. There are a couple of pieces there. First of all, just the idea that not everyone in your school has to work on the same topic, because as George mentioned in the chapter, if you're really passionate about the topic, you're going to be far more interested in doing the inquiry. One of my interests is around the boundary between professional learning that is based on student need and just becoming a learner. I think that that's an area that we haven't explored. We've hired a lot of teachers. We've all taught in a way that we were taught. And now there's this shift to everyone being learners. And sometimes it takes inspiring people to learn about things that they're really, really interested in, just to get the idea that they have to continue to be learners. That's important to their students before the professional learning becomes about student learning needs and evolves into that. It's a really interesting boundary that, as a school leader, I was very interested in. How do you help your educators take those first steps to being learners first, and then doing the professional learning around what the student needs are?
Thanks so much, Donna. That's such a really good point. It's interesting. So in our district, we have both models happening. So we have collaborative inquiries that are based on student needs, but we also have an initiative where, especially when it comes to integrating technology, because for so many teachers, they need to feel comfortable with some of these tools. Sorry, that's my dog. So I'll stop talking. But they need to be learners first, essentially. And hopefully she doesn't bark again as I pose the next question, because it's a really good segue into the next question. And the next question is, how do you... Sorry, Brian, did you want to jump in?
I would. Is my mic working? Because it keeps going in and out. Is it good? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit. When we talk about students, we talk about student voice, student choice. And so this year we've tried to extend that to teacher voice and teacher choice. And so that whole idea of Genius Hour for students, we bring that concept to our teacher learning so that they can follow sort of the path that best suits them. We're talking about pedagogies, and which of those pedagogies do you feel comfortable with now? And because you're comfortable with it, it's sort of something that you are more willing to play with. And so if you're willing to play with it, then let's see how you can use the technology that's available to you in your class to reimagine that pedagogy or reinvigorate that pedagogy. And because we're doing that, it's empowered teachers. And to go back to what Jen said earlier, they then become so excited to share their learning with their other colleagues. And that just creates a snowball effect. And I know you'll get to that in question 4 about making it go viral, but that's the power of making it go viral, is when teachers want to share. And we just had a weekend where 2 of my teachers went to Push Conference. I just presented at the 21st Century Roundtable a few weeks ago. There's lots of people in our school and in our board that want to get out there and show what's happening, and that's exciting. It's really exciting.
Well, that's all. And let's just go crazy and do that question now. So how do you make great learning go viral in your school and move from pockets to a culture of innovation? And Brian has given us some great examples now. Are there any other examples?
I don't know if anybody used TweetBeam before or not. Has anybody used that before or seen it?
Sorry, is it called TweetMe?
Yeah, can you say that again, Brian?
Sorry, TweetBeam. Have you ever seen that before at a conference or no?
Is it like visible tweets that come down?
You gradually build up the profile of all the people that are competing, but that are contributing. So at the last session that we had with staff, we had the TweetBeam up, and as we were talking and as we were sharing our learning, people were tweeting out what they were learning, and just seeing their own learning on a screen is really huge for each other, because you then want to think critically about what you're wanting to say and what you're wanting to add into the conversation. You're thinking about what other people are saying, because you don't want to make a silly tweet out there. So there's a lot of really good reflections that go on, and it's a very simple way to make your learning or your staff's learning visible.
I would say a couple things that I've observed some of our principals doing. We have a principal that, every once a week he's just sharing ideas or things that he has seen in the classroom through an email. We're going down the road of putting in digital signage within our school. We actually added some at our middle school, and you wouldn't believe how excited the kids are to see themselves in some kind of a fun learning experience. And then, of course, harnessing the power of social media. I'll have to check out that TweetBeam and think about something like that. But is there a way to harness the power of social media and bring it into the environment of digital signage and that kind of thing? I think there's so many great ideas, and it's just opening the opportunities for those ideas and just trying it, right? I think that's the biggest thing is the more we have leaders that are willing to share and cross-pollinate ideas, and I think there's just more opportunities for to be more visible ourselves, and so yeah, it's all exciting.
Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I'm just going to jump in here because I'm getting weepy, and I need people's help with this a little bit because I don't work in a space right now where this kind of environment can really happen. I work in a space where there's a certain amount of fear. I work in a space where there's a little bit of siloing going on, and people are still scared about the evaluative piece that comes in when you're brave enough to talk about something at a staff meeting or you're asked to share or whatever it is. And I'm loving hearing this stuff. It's giving me shivers. It's making the hair stand up on my arms. But I guess part of me is really looking for how we work to open that space up. I work with a remarkable group of teachers. We love each other deeply. We share. We trust each other immensely on a lot of things. But this is not a comfort zone for a lot of the people I'm working with. We joke a lot about the fact that I'm all about the share. I'm probably the true extrovert on my staff. And I guess I'd really love people's support and ideas on how you work to help people want to try that.
Lisa, I'd like to pick up on your comment. One of the elements of this that's really interesting to me is I think there's an element of trust here, but the way I see this playing out is the overall culture has to be about, I would say, not only open sharing, but I would call it open receiving. In other words, do you receive ideas, suggestions in a way that's non-judgmental? And I think there's something in sort of the base of that that can help shift a culture. And if there's sort of a group buy-in to honoring ideas, suggestions, remixing, and so on, I think over time, getting that instilled in a group, whether it's in a small group within a school culture, or a system culture, I think that's an important element in people feeling really comfortable about just simply moving on their own journey.
I think one of the important pieces with that idea is that all of the learners in this space, whether we're talking about teachers or students, need to see themselves reflected in the work. They need to see their entry point. I know in Avon Maitland, the success that we've had around the blogging community and with that work around using blogging as a platform for learning is because there are multiple entry points into that work. Whether you're focused on inquiry-based learning and documentation, that can be an entry point into the blogosphere. Or if your focus is on improving or maximizing student outcomes and communication and collaboration are a focus for you, blogging is a fantastic platform to support that. There are so many entry points depending on the chosen method for sharing and making that first step towards community that I think when learners see themselves reflected and see that entry point when those ideas are being shared and excitement is being generated, it's then that we start to get that buy-in. But until they see themselves reflected in the work and find that entry point, I find that there is going to continue to be that resistance.
Absolutely, Lee, and I agree with that, but I would also add that we have to be careful what it is that we want to go viral, and I would say that what we really want to go viral is that changing the trajectory of children's lives. So what we want to go viral is for every teacher to be looking for what's best for each and every child in the classroom, and we don't have to do that alone. We can do that by collaborating with others. We can get all kinds of help to do that, but the key is that our role is to make sure that each child in the classroom has the opportunity move forward in the learning. And that's innovation.
Yeah, I'd say too that it's really important to establish a culture of play or a culture of no shame, no blame. The technology and the things that we are working on right now are so new that it's impossible for anybody to be perfectly right or perfectly wrong. We're all playing, and so that whole evaluative piece, I really try and reassure my staff that I'm playing along with them, and that you're teaching me just as much or probably more than I'm in charge of you. So that we try and get it out of that comfort zone. And I think George Kouros just tweeted a few minutes ago about disruption, and you can't learn without being disrupted. So if we are all sitting around the table and we're all comfortable with what we're doing, nobody's learning anything. So it's really important that people are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, because you have to. That's the only way you can move forward. The other thing is in order to make things go viral or to get everybody going, is you have to create, I think Michael Fulton talks about this a lot, a moral imperative where you have to have a reason to change or a reason to get people to move, and that's the big piece that that we probably need to talk about. What is the reason behind having a teacher want to change their practice?
Can I share one example that I've seen happen in our middle school? We had an educator that was doing a digital citizenship project with her students, and let the students decide how the project was going to unfold. And what happened was amazing, because these 8th graders went from learning about digital citizenship to leading PD sessions with 3rd and 4th graders. And when I say or doing a session, they were 8th grade and doing sessions, training sessions with 7th graders. They started their own Twitter profile. They started their own Facebook account to help communicate with parents. They put letters to the editor in the local newspaper. And when I think of a viral opportunity, when you can really highlight what those things that students can do, it was incredibly viral, and it was just so exciting to see how these students impacted the lives not only of the teachers, but also the other students. And it really was so successful and such a great example of a viral learning opportunity.
Thanks, Jen. I'm just going to jump into, I know that if teachers aren't really comfortable in the social media space, and I know many of the teachers with whom I work aren't necessarily, but one of the things that's worked for us in terms of moving, like, to me, viral can also mean that everyone in the room is able to see the thinking of everyone in the room, and how powerful that can be. And so we had 10 different high schools come together and learn together, and they had some guiding questions, and they had to summarize their thinking on just today's meet. So a back channel that we just used for our own purposes, really. No one from the outside came. But it was just so neat to see the different schools building upon each other's ideas, tweaking, fortifying, thinking about things in slightly different ways. We don't often, as educators, come together and have the opportunities to share outside the walls of our building. So for me, looking at that, I thought that was an incredible way. It didn't have to go to the world, but it was meaningful that it went to 10 different schools in our district. And sometimes just having a back channel at a staff meeting or somewhere where people can pose questions and answer each other's questions just builds that comfort level, but also then makes some of the thinking visible. So as I was hearing some of you talk about, Lisa, certainly your point about the sometimes the fear of not building that culture yet, that is something that I saw that was very, very powerful. Are there any other examples?
I don't know. I always find it hard to think of viral because I think I haven't reached the status of what kids would consider viral. That makes it seem so huge. And Lisa, I think even now that I've been outside the school for the last 6 years, I still feel that same moment of sometimes you don't feel that community or that connection right away. And we even have a great community on Peel 21st, which was our first way of trying to make those connections between the people doing great stuff that just wanted to dive in a bit deeper. I know in the Voxer group you guys have been talking a lot about sharing, and I didn't know how to articulate it, so I'm probably not going to articulate it well now either. But there's something that comes when it goes to being viral. There's like some synergy that happens, I feel. So I think there definitely is that open sharing. But when I reflect on our Peel Spark night, we had a night where we had 8 teachers share their stories in fast-paced 5-minute talks with just time to network and mingle in what we hoped was a cool location. What was cool was to see the common threads throughout the story, and it points back to what you were saying, Donna, that it really was about student learning, teacher risk-taking, and that engagement of us as educators, being active learners in that process. And I think as I looked back on the tweets, I really saw that common theme. So I went back to a few years ago when we had a George at our summer conference, and how we had that same moment of synergy. And I think definitely there was that same concept that many people were having the same conversation at the same time, even if it was different tools or different places. But there was also people at different levels having the same conversation. So I almost think for something to go viral, whether it's in a school board, whether it's in education as a whole, or whether it's in a school itself, it's almost like when we all come onto the same, when we all join the same train at the same time, if that makes sense. I remember being in a course on change in curriculum, and they talked about those waves of change, that you have those moments from the bottom and the top, and that's terrible because we're not the bottom and the top. But when the forces converge and we're having that common move forward focus, and unfortunately, to me, I know that there's also those moments when we separate again. So how do we balance that piece out when we're trying to go viral as well?
I think just to pick up on that idea, I think it's important that when we do all come together and have those moments where we share a vision and common goals, I think it's important too that we still do break off and have and still have our own ideas and try new things. And I know George makes point of that in the book. If we were all doing the same thing the same way all the time, then we're not being innovative. And it's important that if we're working towards a shared vision or shared goal, that we still engage ourselves in lots of ideas and trying new things and taking new risks and finding what works and what doesn't, and how we can integrate that back into maybe that shared vision or goal.
Thank you. I'm looking at the time, and it's 9 o'clock, and I know we haven't come to all the questions, and that's fine because we continue the conversation in the slow chat. We continue the conversation in Voxer. We're meeting again on March 22nd. So this is definitely not the end to the conversation. Certainly I invite you to continue to think about this idea of good work going viral, learning going viral, and what that looks like in your systems. And one of the things that really is, I think, intriguing to me is when you look at the 8 things to look for in today's classroom. And what if we take a look at those items, and are those an opportunity for us to not just build capacity of our students, but to also move forward and have learning go viral. So these are some of the things that we're going to, I think, think about in the next few weeks. Are there any parting remarks from anyone before we call it for the evening?
Just to check out the hashtag, I know people have been tweeting out to both Awesomook, sorry, I don't know how I can't say it yet, and Innovators Mindset. There's been some great conversations. We've been trying to keep them all going at the same time, but
Wonderful. So we'll certainly check that. And I know Mark has been very gracious. He has storified the last 2 Google Hangouts, so maybe I'll publicly ask if you'll be able to do that for us again. So look for that on Twitter. You're always welcome to join the Voxer chat. You know, we can continue the conversations there as well, and we'll send out some information on how to join that again on the AwesomeMUC chat. So on behalf of all the organizers, thank you to our panelists who joined us for the evening, Brian and Jen. We really appreciated hearing your perspectives, and we will see you on the 22nd or on Twitter or on Voxer. Thanks again.